Welcome back to Hardcover Hooligans. My name is Danilo, and I am joined, as always, by my good friend Mac.
Yeah.
And Mac, good to hear your voice.
That's what I sound like now.
Mac, I have a question for you.
Ooh.
If you were the last human being on Earth, would you also spend your days listening to classical music and thinking about how horny you are?
You know, going into this, I really couldn't believe that that's such a huge part of this book is how horny this character is.
It's, dare I say, a theme?
I know, I think it is, but just like a theme that, listen, I know that... I guess we're gonna hop right into this. Pleasure is not the same. I understand that. However, as far as the book is concerned, he never does it one time. I'm pretty sure he never masturbates. I'm pretty sure.
In a world of vampires, it's better than nothing, and he was doing nothing.
Yeah, he was seriously doing nothing. I don't know if, like, maybe... It really feels like the publisher is like, he can't masturbate. Like, I don't know, something about it. But
so what are we talking about?
We're talking about porno this week. No, we're talking about I Am Legend, of course.
We're talking about a book, or I guess it's not really a book. It's a novella called I Am Legend.
Can I tell you something about it being a novella? I have read a lot of... Because, like, I like... When I finish books, I like to go online. Because I avoid all discourse about books that I'm reading. And then I look up and see what people are thinking. And somebody on a subreddit read... Okay, so chances are, if you read I Am Legend, it's in a collection of short stories. And... more than one person read the whole collection and was like, what's all that stuff that comes after the vampire part? I don't get
that has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, and it was just, I couldn't believe how you wouldn't realize that it's a different story. None of the characters are the same or anything.
I have one of the 1-star Goodreads reviews for the end of the episode is a whole thing about, I didn't understand what all that other stuff was at the end. And I'm like, is that a troll? Is that a person? They finished the book. And they were like, that was a good story, but I didn't really get the rest of it after the last line.
1 star.
1 star. So we're talking about the novella I Am Legend, which, before this, I did not know was a novella or a book or anything. I just thought it appeared out of the ether as a Will Smith movie from 2007.
Oh, really?
That scared me shitless
I
was a middle schooler. I couldn't sleep for weeks. I only watched like half of it. It just, I don't know what it was. I think it was how creepy the vampires/zombies are.
Yeah.
It's like in the dark, and it's, I don't know. It is, I still haven't seen the rest of it. That I feel like I'd be scared of it now. But
fun fact about me, I have never seen this movie. When I was a kid, I think there was like an attempt made where my father was like, "Hey, let's watch this movie," and then it's like,
this is an important piece of cinema.
And then we couldn't watch it, so I never finished it. And I knew it was based on a book, but I did not know that the book it's based on is 100 pages long and not like a actual full length horror novel, which is always a fun surprise when you can blast through one of these hardcover hooligans books in 24 hours. It is very, very short.
I was halfway through the novella when I realized, the whole book is not this. No.
Yeah.
I only have 60 pages to go. And I don't have 200 pages to go.
And it's tight, man. It is. I think it's...
Yeah.
It does a lot with its short length.
So I Am Legend was written, or maybe published, in 1954, which I also didn't know how old it was, by Richard Matheson. That I later learned he was one of the writers on the original Twilight Zone.
Are you serious?
Which sort of makes sense. There's also 2 other movies based on this, and like the first one, I think it was done in the 60s. He helped write the screenplay for, but
I did know that.
Yeah, and then it was so bad he decided to go under a pseudonym in the credits.
Yeah, I have a fun fact. If you Google Richard Matheson, it says one of his influences is Stephen King, and I just want to come on here and say that's not possible. And it's the opposite, actually.
Yeah, did AI give you that answer?
That might be Google AI.
Yeah, but Stephen King has cited Richard Matheson as a big influence, and I see why, having not read a lot of Stephen King, but this is pretty... Yeah, I don't know.
Well, there's a big famous Stephen King vampire novel that you can really tell the... I mean, Salem's Lot is a lot different than this, and because it's not like... I don't know, we'll talk about what makes I Am Legend unique, but the sort of the creeping dread of vampires, like a modern Dracula, there you can definitely see a lot of the... It's not like plagiarism, not by any means, but it's you can definitely feel the influence of both the Bram Stoker novel and this, which I think until Salem's Lot came out are like the two big vampire books of all time, even though I feel like a lot of people nowadays maybe don't know that I Am Legend is a book.
Yeah, I mean, I've never read the original Bram Stoker's Dracula, but
Me neither.
I've seen... but I have seen the movie
with Keanu
Bram
Reeves?
Stoker's Dracula. Yeah, with Keanu Reeves. What a great movie.
Yeah,
I mean, Keanu Reeves, bad acting, can't ruin that movie. That's a fucking fantastic movie. And it sort of works that he's kind of stiff and weird.
He's weird. It takes place in a weird...
He can't do a British accent even though he's a British man.
No. Well, he doesn't need to because he's weird. Weird British people's British accents sound fake. Everybody knows that.
You're too busy looking at Gary Oldman being...
acting his heart out.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah. It's not fair to Keanu Reeves that he is acting opposite to Gary Oldman.
Yeah, that's true. Gary Oldman as Dracula.
Yes.
Anyway, so yeah, listener, if you haven't watched that movie, you should go watch it. It is crazy. Don't watch it with your parents.
No, don't do that.
Wait, oh my god, it's also like funny. You've seen it, right?
Yeah.
I was surprised that it was funny when they're like hunting the vampire.
Yeah, it's like goofy. It's like
it's great.
It's very horror. I love a horror thing that has a funny moment, but it's like not just for like comic relief. It's sort of like this whole thing is kind of silly, isn't it? Like there's like
or like this situation is crazy, like sort of a sitcom.
Yeah.
Like we gotta.
There's moments of that in this book too, with the whole Ben Corman thing. Like I think that is so funny. He's like, "Come out, Robert." I think that's very funny.
Yeah. So speaking of things that are funny, we will turn to some of the details in this book. It sort of starts out. Our main character's name is Robert Neville.
Which already, a funny name. I love that.
Yeah, his last name is someone's first name. So he is living in Los Angeles in 1976.
The distant post-apocalyptic future of the 70s.
Yes, of 1970s. And it took me some level setting to be like, where is he? What is he doing? So he's driving like an old car, and he's like going to Sears.
Me too. Me too.
But this is a classic post-apocalyptic one guy trying to survive. It's super influential. Like if you have seen or heard any post-apocalyptic stuff, you know what we're talking about. It's one guy. He's barricaded his house. As far as he knows, everyone in the world is dead. Or turned into a vampire, and he has sort of figured out how to survive. He has like a cooler full of food. Whenever he needs something, he just goes to the abandoned like Sears and gets it. But the main thing is that everyone is vampires, and the funny part is they are all classic vampires.
Yes, they are.
So one of the first details that made me go like, oh my god, is that he's growing garlic, and he keeps garlic around his house to keep the vampires away.
He also keeps a mirror on his front door, but he like learns that actually doesn't. There's like some things that work, like the mirror thing doesn't really work, like, but the garlic does work, and the crosses do work.
Yeah. So the novel is split into parts, split by several months, and we sort of get his present situation. And we occasionally get a flashback to his life before this event happened, as sort of like as this apocalypse is unfolding.
But even then, those flashbacks take place, like, it's very vague, but they're like, remember when all those bombs fell? And it's like, what?
Oh yeah, I guess I missed that detail.
Yeah, it's why the dust storms are happening is because of some sort of bomb, but it never actually says why. But like, he served in a war. He says that happened when I was in Panama. And it's like, And then like a bunch of bombs fell. Like the reason
they
that
bombed the Panama Canal in the Great Panama War.
I mean, that might as well be what's happening. And the reason that Robert Neville he's immune to the virus has got to be the goofiest thing I've ever.
I know. Okay, we'll get to that.
Sorry, I'm so excited.
So he spends during the day he can do whatever he wants because the vampires are asleep, but it's not just that they're asleep. They're like in some sort of coma, so he can like go into the house and like sees a vampire and can like they like don't wake up. He can just like kill them and stab them while they're sleeping.
Effective, thank God that they don't that they're not just awake and creeping around in those dark places.
Yeah, and then at night they all hang out outside his apartment, or not his apartment, his house.
They're trying to bring in like Seinfeld.
Hang out around his house and they like sort of like kill each other. They're basically sort of like wild animals, and every morning there's some that are dead and he has to truck them to this huge constantly burning fire pit where they dumped all the bodies. Like, because back when civilization was going on, they figured the only way to stop it from spreading was to burn the bodies of the infected. During the night, he tries to not let the sound of vampires drive him crazy. And so he drinks a lot and listens to classical music and resists the urge to jump out there and have sex with one of the sexy female vampires. They drive him crazy. Because it drives him to drink. Because
they do... It's like the Dracula thing where it's like... Well, I guess Dracula, when he like looks at you, you like... He can... It's like Dracula, it's like D&D vampires where they, you know, they can... They have like a thrall, they can like mind control you. But in this world, it's just like, no, he just wants to have sex with women and they're women vampires.
And he's alone and he hasn't had sex in a while. And so...
In a while, at the beginning of the book, it's also not even really that long since he's had sex. It's like been 10 months and it's like, right. Like, it hasn't been 10 years. And he's like, oh my God, he can't believe it.
The whole, I think, if any part of this has not aged well, it's the whole sexual part. And God forbid when another woman comes in this, we'll talk about that when we get there.
Yeah, it's not great.
But he has a little friend. His name is Ben Cortman. And every night, Ben Cortman, who was his neighbor and his like friend and turned into a vampire, like teases him and says, "Come out, Neville. It's Ben Cortman. Come out."
Yeah, because there are some of the vampires. There's like, we'll get into there's a lot of lore. Most of this book is vampire lore, but some of the vampires are alive and some of the vampires are like undead thralls, and the ones that are alive are the ones like Ben Cortman when they can like talk and still retain their faculties a little bit.
Yeah. And a lot of the main thrust of this book, and I think probably where a lot of its originality comes from, is that it takes this idea of a classical vampire from like myth, and Neville spends time like scientifically figuring it out. And we'll talk a little bit later about to what extent that is goofy and nonsensical and to the extent that it is effective. But this first part ends, which I thought was great. He's like all sad and depressed. He drinks himself to sleep one night, wakes up, is super sad. He goes to the tomb of someone called Virginia, which we later learn is his wife. He spends some time there, or he like drops off a body, spends some time there. He doesn't know how long it's been, and he looks at his watch and he's like, "Oh, it's 3:00, not a big deal." And then he realizes his watch has stopped. And so he has to get in his car before like 6:30 p.m. is when all the vampires come out. And he doesn't know what time it is. And, eventually it's fine. He gets to his car and like his garage is open and everything. And the vampires are there. He just barely makes it inside and has to like rebuild a little bit because the vampires like trash his car. But they like don't trash his generator and stuff. And so it sort of seems like vampires don't know what's important to him. They don't like remember being human. They've gone a little crazy.
They almost get him though. It's pretty close. Ben Cortman almost gets.
They do almost get him. He also has this. It's not this thing where they're like so scary. Like he seems to be always willing to go into a fist fight with them, and it's not that big of a deal. Like he can punch them, and they're not like super strength,
right? And it's also like he is immune. Like he can't. even if they bite him, he's not gonna be a vampire.
Right, which I don't know if we learned early on. That was a slight point of confusion for me. Like, I thought he always had to be worried about all that, but
so did I. I thought that
like
that's why it was so scary, but then it's not. And they don't really have super strength. Do they run faster? Or is
no,
that
I think
just
they're just like sick people. Because the whole idea is that there's this virus, and it swept through the whole world. They didn't know how to stop it, and everyone became vampire. Except for Neville.
Except for Robert Neville. And maybe other people, but Robert Neville makes a point of being like, well, even if there are other people, they're probably like in Europe. I can't get to them anyway, so it doesn't matter. So I might as well be the only person alive.
Yeah, he can only get as far as, his car can take him in a day's drive. Right.
Because he never risks. He's never he's never set up camp in the woods at night. He always comes back to the house.
Right. So that's part 2. That's part 1. Part 2 starts with a flashback to his previous life, sort of as the pandemic is.
Oh, hey, I don't know if this is just because like I'm an idiot, but the name Kathy gets thrown out first, and I don't know why, but I was like, oh, that's his wife. And then the name Virginia gets thrown out, and I was like, who the fuck is that? I was like...
It took me like 2/3 of the way to figure out who was the daughter.
Okay, thank God, because I seriously didn't know. And then he's like sitting and he's like, if only I could kiss Virginia one more time. And I'm like, that's your daughter, you son of a bitch. But then I'm like, oh wait, no, it can't be his daughter.
Yeah, it was very confusing who these people were. Like, I definitely thought Kathy was the wife to begin with, but then it turns out... Because she also has like a wife name. Like,
yeah, I know. And she's
not a baby named Kathy.
She's the one he's like constantly walking around the house and being like, Kathy, no, Kathy. Yeah. And then just like suddenly now and then it's all about Virginia. Because it's all about Kathy and he's so horny. I was like, it has to be... It has to be his wife, but it's actually
no, that's his daughter.
In a subtle inversion, the horny man is thinking about his daughter and not his wife. So it's sort of a Matheson
and his
classic.
Wife is named Virginia. Which, I don't know. Take that as you will.
I also this one was on me. The first time I saw Virginia, I was like, he went to Virginia, and then I read like the whole page. I read the whole like 2 pages. Like, what the fuck? And then I went back and it was like he went to visit Virginia, and I was like, oh,
loved the state of Virginia.
I mean, he was like, the line was like, I wonder. Oh yeah, he's like, I can't believe I ended up visiting Virginia, and I was like, what the hell? He did that in a day? Oh no, that's a person.
I can't tell you how many times I've accidentally gone to Virginia.
1 minute I'm looking up videos of Pennsylvania Avenue. The next minute I'm speeding to Washington D.C. through Virginia, of course.
Bethesda's calling my name.
Oh my god, it's so beautiful.
So this is the part of the story. So like he has a flashback about, and they like talk like, should we send Kathy to school? This pandemic's happening, and Virginia is like sort of tired and weak from it as well because like she has it, but they don't know.
And there's these dust storms that are buffeting. What is the word? Buffeting the house. Is
buffeting?
Yeah.
Buffeting, I think.
Ooh, buffeting the house. They're taking a little bit of chicken, a little bit of Spanish rice, multicultural buffet. Yeah.
Some Jello, lots of Jello.
But it's mysterious dust storms from some sort of bomb that was maybe dropped in the United States or dropped, I don't know, wherever bombs are dropped. I don't know if it was like it's very vague. I have no idea what the bomb is.
But yeah, wife and daughter not in the picture anymore. Classic apocalyptic man with tragic backstory alone.
Because there's like a moment where he's like, if I gotta figure out this vampire thing, I gotta think back. And then the flashback starts, and then the flashback ends, and he's like, oh, no more thinking about the past. The past is too hard to think about.
And he keeps pouring himself whiskey. He has no shortage of whiskey in the apocalypse, that's for sure.
I will say there's a nice moment in the flashback. We know who Ben Cortman is, and then in the flashback, he's like, oh, my ride for work is here. And then he goes outside, and like the section ends. He got in the car. Hi, Ben Cortman said. And you're like, whoa, it's the same guy. I did like that.
Yeah. It's very clear, that he's Matheson's an experienced screenwriter, because like it's the classic, the watch is stopped, he has to get back home. It's like perfect, that's a classic. Yeah. It ends up being fine. Or like Ben Cortman said, and we're like, oh shit.
All the moments like that are very effective. I have to say this. Richard Matheson, his first credit on IMDb is Jaws 3D. I don't know if that's true. I don't know. I don't know the validity of this, but that is his first writing credit. He is one of 3 credited writers on that film. So I just,
Yeah, I think he kept trying to put vampires in it, and they.
Oh my God, Jaws
kept saying
vampire?
no.
Vampire shark? I mean, come
Jaws.
on.
He thought it's Jaws. Vampires are Jaws.
They're that's why he signed on. He was like, "We want you to direct." Well, he saw Jaws 3D. He was like, "You want me to direct a vampire with huge breasts? Is what my whole novel is about." And they said, "No, Richard. No, Richard."
So Neville starts trying to figure out the vampires because he needs some sort of meaning in his life. He's like, if I can figure out how to cure this thing, maybe I can do something good for humanity instead of sitting around drinking, being horny. And so he has an interesting thought, which I never thought about. So he starts figuring it out scientifically. He goes to he gets a microscope.
He does his own research. He does his own research is what he does.
Robert Neville, alt-right icon. And he starts thinking about like inconsistencies, which I thought was interesting. He's like, would a Muslim vampire be afraid of a cross? Like,
yeah, I love this, and I love that the answer is no. It's like they are afraid of their religious iconography, but it's only because like when they turned into a vampire, they were aware of that stereotype.
Yeah, so he starts figuring this out. He does microbiology and stuff, and so he's trying to basically scientifically explain all the reasons that a classical vampire could work because of this bacteria. So he figures out it's a bacteria passed on by spores, which is why burning the body works, and why the dust storms exacerbated it. And then there's, like we mentioned before, 2 kinds of vampires. There's ones that have died, and then they come back, and it's sort of like the bacteria reanimate the person, but they're sort of like insane. They are the living dead. They can't be brought back. Then there's the ones that are sick but still alive, and the bacteria has sort of, made them want to drink blood because blood feeds the bacteria.
It also is directly responsible for making their canine teeth longer.
Yeah, that's super goofy.
Yeah.
The bacteria makes 2 teeth grow pointy for some reason. What is it? The garlic? It's like
I didn't really get this, but this is like there's a lot of sciencey words that I'm just like, okay, yeah, whatever.
And I think that's what he's counting on. I think if you think about this for 2 seconds with an actual scientist, it would make no sense. Like the bacteria makes them allergic to garlic because one of the experiments he runs is he like takes the essence of garlic, like the chemical that's in there, and injects it into a vampire, and nothing happens.
Right.
But it's something about like them smelling garlic causes them to have an allergic. The bacteria basically gives them an allergy to garlic. Not that chemical.
I don't know if
or something.
I don't know if there's a lot of like that Dracula novel's pretty silly, huh? Like there's a lot of that in this because there's a moment where he says something like, I guess in the book it's the garlic plant. It's not the actual like bulbs of garlic that the vampire is afraid of. That's in this book, but like, because like when we think of vampires being afraid of garlic, we think of the bulbs. But I haven't read the book, and I don't remember in the movie if this is covered. But it's like the plant, and like there's a whole moment. There's like when he's figuring out this garlic stuff. There's a whole like, well, I tried exposing them to just the plant, and the plant didn't work, so that legend isn't true.
Oh.
But the bulbs do actually work, so then he can make like necklaces out of them, which is what he does. But it's that's the reason he's doing that, and I don't know. I don't get it. I sort of get the other stuff, like the germ I can buy, and it's like a bacteria parasite. They're not really vampires, but I don't get the garlic at all.
I think a lot of this hinges on he says enough sciencey words that sound plausible enough.
It worked, and
the reader goes like, "Sure."
Yep.
Which he wrote for the Twilight Zone, folks. So that sort of makes a little bit of sense. And there's like something like why a stake to the heart works. Like, because he like keeps thinking about like, but there's this one time I did a stake in the heart and she like disintegrated. But it's because this was something I was unclear on too. It's because like normally the bacteria are like normal, but then once they're exposed to air, they start like self-cannibalizing, and that's why vampires disintegrate when they're stabbed. Or something, whatever.
But they don't always, because he stabs some of them, and like the living ones, all of their blood like rushes out, but then the dead ones, they disintegrate, and he like doesn't get
Well, the dead ones, yeah, they disintegrate with that, but like if they get shot,
right?
He's like, the bacteria has created this body glue, so like, which is also very goofy. Where like they get shot, and like the second it's pierced, the skin, the bacteria has caused the skin to like. This bacteria is doing a lot of heavy lifting.
It is.
Explains the vampires.
But I do like I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's described as something like shooting vampires is like dropping marbles on cement. They're just
marbles on tar or something.
Yeah. Where it just like are barely like sticking out, and then when the tar like molds, it'll like pop out the marbles. And
then he explains the being afraid of the cross as like a psychological thing, that because everyone's been exposed to all this imagery of vampires, and this disease is going around that is turning people into vampires, that when people become vampires, they sort of go crazy a little bit. He's called like hysterical blindness. That's why they don't see themselves in a mirror or are scared by mirrors. They like do, but because some part of this bacteria has caused them to go like kind of insane, they react the way they've been primed to react before they got infected.
It's cool.
So like a Jewish vampire would be triggered by like I think he runs this experiment or something.
He does. It's Ben Cortman. He does because Ben.
Oh
yeah.
Jewish. I was gonna say, how do you find a Jewish vampire?
He shows him the oh damn it, I don't remember what it's called.
The Torah?
No, isn't it the thing you hang up like outside of the door? I don't remember, but whatever it is, it affects Ben Cortman that way. But he says he's
cross
like,
doesn't.
And he's like an atheist. You could nothing. There would be nothing. But he doesn't actually know that, I guess. But that's his. He surmises that.
And as we know, Neville is a good Christian boy because he does not masturbate.
He does not masturbate, so we know that if he were to turn into a vampire, he would be afraid of the good Catholic cross.
In the middle of all this, like he's drinking less. Like this sort of gives him something to be less isolated
and less horny,
and less horny. Critically less horny. At some point, he finds a dog, and this is very sad. It is
very sad, and such a small part of this. Like everybody, like when you think of I Am Legend, you think of Will Smith and his dog. It's barely in the book. It is seriously barely in the book.
He like finds a dog and spends so like many weeks trying to like get it to trust him, and he finally then it doesn't show up, and then it comes back and it's sick, and he like traps it and tries to bring it home and tries to cure it, and then finally it's comfortable enough it like licks him, and then it like dies later that week.
Yeah, it dies a week later.
I think this is also at the end of part 2 is when it's revealed that he had to Kathy ended up getting sick, his daughter, and he had to throw her in the fire pit.
Yeah, and those armed men. It is literally, I don't know if anybody, it's The Last of Us stole this. I am throwing that out there. You can do with this what you will. TV show and video game stole this literally exact. She's sick, and so like the mandate is you can't. I guess she's dead at this point, so it's a little different. But the mandate is like you can't bury the people. You have to throw the infected people into the fire, and so he's about to do that, and he's not going to do that, and then gunmen like beat the shit out of him and take his daughter and kill her anyway. And I'm like, all right, that's very sad, very sad. Hang on. The thing with Virginia is she like died and he buried her, and then she like showed up the next day, like clawed her way out, like still sick, crazed vampire. So he killed her with a stake and buried her again. So no wonder Robert Neville is so horny. if I had to kill my wife with a stake, boy, that gets me going. I tell you that.
Yeah, not a stake like a pointy thing. A stake like a.
If I had to bludgeon her to death with like a T-bone. That's what he does. The book never says that, but that is what's happening.
So now part 3 is in June of 1978. It's been like 2 years. He's sort of figured out the vampire stuff.
But they keep showing there's like still more. It's very suspicious that he has killed a comical amount of vampires, and yet still outside at night there's so many of them.
They still keep like sort of
wonder what's going on.
Up. Yeah, and he sort of hasn't been able to find a cure because he's not a scientist. He's just a guy who got a bunch of books from the library,
which is a big
very
thing that the
horny guy who got books from the library.
They don't let you check out books if you're horny. They test you.
Why didn't he check porn out from the library?
That's how they know something's up.
He never goes out looking for porn at all. That's not something would have...
Was there porn in the 50s writing about the 70s? Now,
I don't know.
No, but he, that's a thing in the movie that's different, is in the movie, he is a scientist, right? He's like a military scientist, and that's a huge, like, I feel like it's pretty critically interesting and important that he isn't a scientist.
Yeah, he's just a guy.
He's just a guy. He's a veteran still, but he wasn't,
we don't want to besmirch the troops. He was a veteran. It's very important that we know that.
Yes.
God bless the troops. Thanks, Mac, for pointing that out. The main character of this was a veteran. One of our heroes.
Yes. Oh my God, sorry. Moment of silence for Robert Neville and the troops.
Moment of silence for a fictional veteran of a fictional war.
Oh, the Panama War. And the Panama Bomb. Oh my God. Oh, he's also by this point figured out that the dust storms are what is because like people were getting sick by the mosquitoes because the mosquitoes were carrying the infection.
Right.
And the dust storm, it was like what was kicking them all up. So that's why everybody got infected so fast.
Dust storms kick up mosquitoes.
They do.
But his hobby is to hunt for Ben Cortman during the day.
It is very funny.
It's sort of like a cat and mouse thing.
He's also like, at this point, he's almost fine. He's like, oh, I kind of like being alone, actually. Like, it's not bad.
He's really adjusted. He's like, I got enough food. I know how to kill the vampires. I just kill vampires, listen to music. I'm not horny anymore because I figured that was like the solution. Like he had to figure out how this all works and how he's not horny anymore.
He had to become a murderer to cure his horniness. Which, I mean, is that a theme? I don't know.
Maybe. And one day, he sees a woman walking in a field in broad daylight.
And she is suspiciously tan. I love that detail comes off at first as like a creepy... like writer detail, and then I could not believe it comes back in a big way why she says, I was like, you got me. You're right. She was suspiciously tan. I can't believe it.
Initially, so he's like a big muscly man with a big beard, and he's like, hey! And she starts running, and then he's like, wait, I don't want to hurt you, and starts sprinting at her and running and trying to catch her. And he can't not have a sexual thought about her at every juncture.
There's also the she's cute, but she's not that hot. Like she was like, oh man, I wish this was a hotter chick. Like what?
Yeah, it's like I would imagine me spending the rest of if she come months earlier, I would have probably forced myself on her. And you're like, whoa!
There's seriously a moment where he's like, yeah, I've thought about raping vampires. And it's like, I didn't ask, Robert. I didn't ask.
No, but here's the thing. That's the weird thing of like you can talk about raping vampires, but you can't talk about a dude masturbating.
Right. It is very weird. They don't plan. When the book started and he was so horny, I was like, oh, is it? I was kind of into it. I was like, this is like a weird, thoughtful examination of like this side of the apocalypse that I'm pretty sure I've never read before. Like,
yeah.
But then no.
He's just a man from the 50s who is sexually repressed, I guess
at the end of the book, like if he's ever had these thoughts out loud, it might make the legend of this guy even creepier and scarier. Like I don't know if that is the intention, that because he explicitly has not forced himself onto any of the vampires.
Yeah.
But we don't know if like he's thought about it. He's definitely brought them to his house before. So
yeah,
we don't know.
I mean, the whole like, sexuality, loneliness is very, I think, interesting as a theme. And a lot of this stuff, it's like, I sort of wish it was done more in depth.
Yeah. Me too.
Or more thoughtfully than like, white guy in the 50s, yeah, he'd be really horny.
Yeah.
And there's no way to get it out except to have rapey thoughts.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's not an examination of what would isolation do to someone, or like, oh, this is the dark side. Like maybe, like he also doesn't feel bad about having these thoughts.
No.
Like you just add that level. If he's like, it's crossed my mind, I feel guilty about it because I know it's wrong. He's just like, I've thought about it, but I haven't done it. So what can you do? Everyone would
have
fine.
I'm like everybody. I don't think so.
Everyone would do everything the exact same way I have. But he eventually, like, for lack of a better word, captures her and brings her back.
Yeah.
It is just, it's basically like forcibly be like, hey, trust me.
Yeah.
And she's very scared. He thinks she's infected. He shows her garlic and she runs in the bathroom and throws up, which is very suspicious.
It is super suspicious. Like, the book goes out of its way. And, you know, to be fair to the book, that he is used to garlic and everything in his house smells like garlic all the time and he smells like garlic constantly. So, I have smelled, you know, like, you ever smell those little jars of minced garlic, like, right from the, like, ugh, that is disgusting. But never once have I sprinted to the bathroom and forcefully vomited after that.
To her defense, she does have a pretty good defense. She's like, I've been starving and alone.
I forgot about that.
You just chased me for 2 miles and I thought you were going to kill me. And then you shove a bunch of garlic in my face. Yeah, I'm going to throw up. That's fair. Part of that makes sense to me.
But she's like, yeah, I'll eat. We'll hang out.
Yeah. Her name is Ruth. They talk. They sort of... She, like, had a husband. He continually has sexual thoughts about her.
And she's not that hot. Come on. She's fine.
It's like, she's thin and... but also, her boobs. That's basically what he's thinking.
The shape of her breast under my bathrobe. And I love the idea that sometimes he hangs out in the apocalypse in a bathrobe. That made me pretty happy.
Well, at some point they're like opening up to each other. She's like had a husband who died and
ripped apart recently by vampires.
Recently, and then she just started walking around, I guess.
He
tells her about her daughter and wife, and she like hugs him, and she's like, "Oh, we're connecting," but also her breasts were pressing against me.
And they have sex, right? Or am I wrong about that?
I don't think so. I don't think they have sex.
I thought they might, but you might be right.
I think they like just
they go to sleep in each other's arms or something like that.
Yeah, they like embrace because he's like weeping or something. I don't know.
He's like, "Oh, Robert."
Yeah, I interpreted it as they just like two human beings connecting. He hasn't connected with someone in a really long time, and they have like an emotional thing.
That's fair. Fair. I'll allow it. Well, according to Lit Charts, quote, "This part is confusingly written."
I would agree with that.
Further implication is that Neville accidentally has had intercourse with the vampire. Oh yeah, Ruth's a vampire. Spoiler.
Yeah, spoiler in this podcast where we talk about everything that happens in the book. Ruth is a vampire, which is like, duh. But also, you know, I've never read this before, and I was like, she could be a person, and he's sort of being unfair. He tests her blood and puts it under a microscope, and he looks at it and he goes like, oh, and then a big old hammer comes on his head.
I think that this is a really sort of well done thing, because the whole time I'm like, she's got to be a vampire, and I think that the reveal is that you are right is sort of devastating. It's like, oh my god, like, yeah, it doesn't work. It's not like she's definitely not a vampire, and then oh my god, she is a vampire. It's like, no, Robert the whole time is like, I'm like 98% sure she's a vampire.
Well, because it's also, she doesn't behave like the other vampires. So, like, she's kind of behaving like a normal person, except for, like, the weird garlic thing.
But he gets hit with the hammer.
She's so tan.
He gets hit with the hammer, and she starts running, and he reaches out to grab her leg, and his hand slides off the tan on her leg, and she's, like, sickly pale. And I was like, Richard, you did it.
Yeah, so she knocks him out. He wakes up with a bad headache. And there's a letter that has been left for him. And it's probably about the worst news you could get as the last man on Earth in a vampire world.
It is comically awful news about the state of the Union. It's bad. Things are bad in the Union. Folks.
So, highlights. She's like, we're starting a new vampire society.
And there's so many of us, by the way.
Yeah. We have a pill that we can be sort of normal now. We're normal now.
We're normal.
You're the crazy one.
Yep.
We all know about you, and we're coming for you.
Yep.
And the reason I'm telling you all this is because, hey, I kind of love you. I get it. It sucks, but they're coming. Best head to the mountains.
Oh, also, Robert killed her husband. Not vampires.
Oh, yeah.
Robert did that.
Yep.
And all
Robert
of the alive vampires he's been killing the whole time have, like, been, like, the sentient ones trying to form society. So
Yeah, they've been, like, they were, like, so close to just being normal people again. Like, she, like, takes out this pill. Like, we figured out this pill that, like...
Which is vague, and they just
realize...
brush right past it. They're like, turns out you can just take a pill the whole time. And I don't know what pill it is, but whatever.
Well, and he says the bacteria has, like, mutated, so now it's less... And especially because, like, the part that makes you insane after you get infected is, like, it's just sort of you going crazy because you're sick. And it's like, you know, you take an antibiotic and then you're kind of good. But, like, the ones that die and come back to life, they're, like, lost. Like,
yeah, they're the scary ones.
They can't be brought back. So he's like, oh, no. And then cut to 6 months later.
Yeah. Where's Robert Neville, you might ask?
He's still at home.
Oops.
Listening to classical music. Still, I guess not horny anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, he's fine.
Then all of a sudden, like a truck pulls up and a vampire militia comes out. And they kill Ben Cortman as Ben Cortman is trying to escape. I know. It turns out he was just hiding in the chimney across the street. And Neville's like, he was just across the street and I looked for him. Not that he would have killed him if he found him because they had their cute little cat and mouse thing. But long story short, the new vampire militia captures Neville. He like shoots one of them because like he thought they were going to take him peacefully, but then they didn't really say anything or announce anything. So he's like,
and they
they're
buried
going
an
to kill
axe
me
through his door, like they broke in, like they're going to kill him.
Yeah, and so he fought back. Then but they grab him. He wakes up. He has like a huge chest wound, and he's like in some prison cell. And Ruth comes and visits him. She's like, hey, so they're going to execute you. There's throngs of people outside. You're the scary one now because you're one of the few normal people. Like, there's like, everyone knows you as the scary guy who lives in his house and has killed a shit ton of vampires. He's like, but I empathize with you. Here's a suicide pill. Take it.
I wish somebody had the guts to just do that to me. I empathize with you, but however, here's a suicide pill.
And so he looks out of his window. He like gets up. It's super hard because he has this huge chest wound. He looks out over like the crowd of these vampires. He thinks like, wow, I'm the legend now. The way the vampire was the legend in our world. And the novel ends on the final line, I am legend.
Very good.
And then it ends.
I think a banger ending if I ever saw one.
Solid. And that's I am legend.
Wait a minute. What about all the other chapters?
The next chapter, which in my edition is called Buried Talents. Mm-hmm. And starts with a man in a wrinkled black suit entered the fairgrounds. Yeah, that's the same book. Is that Robert Neville?
Well, because the guy on Reddit was like, is this the Vampire Society? And it's like, what? You'd think it would still be a big part of their culture. Like, I don't know.
In that person's defense, at least the edition I have, like the mass market paperback, it does not say I am legend and other stories. It just says I am legend.
Does it really? Mine says and other stories.
Oh, yeah. Mine just says I am legend. The blurb is just talking about I am legend. There's really nothing to indicate these are different stories, except the copyright acknowledgments, all the copyright years and all the different stories.
But I'm not reading those. All right, all right, that's a little bit more. That makes sense. But still, I mean, it is very funny to acknowledge that the story was good, but then I'm not really sure what was going on in that buried talents part of the book.
So, what are your thoughts on I Am Legend?
I Am Legend is pretty good. I don't, I'm not really sure if it's like. People call this like the greatest vampire novel, and it's like I don't really know if that's true. It is fun. It's like fun that the vampires are like mutant zombies, kind of like that's fun, and that there's a scientific explanation, and it's a fun horror. The book's definitely scary, and I really like horror novels. So
and I like that it's. I mean, I was gonna say it's less about the vampires, but like the human part of it is. What would being the last human do to you?
Yeah, that's the scary
and like
part.
What would it lead you to become? Which is sort of what the story is. The vampires and the garlic is all sort of like incidental stuff.
Yeah, that's the story. Like, that's the horror. And I love that, like, creeping dread of being, like, not to be the most generic man on the planet, but after a world where we were sequestered inside for a really long time, like, I don't know. I found all those parts. I was never nearly as horny as Robert Neville was, but it does. I don't know. In a post, it's still going on, obviously, but post lockdown world, like, those parts were really like powerful is a strong word, but effective, I think.
Yeah, or like I feel like I could connect with it more, and that was one of my questions. Like, does this feel like after COVID? Feel more like significant and interesting? Like, I definitely felt like, oh, the world has a sort of crazy irrational reaction to like a major pandemic, and I'm like, yeah, I see that. That doesn't seem that far-fetched. Or like, hey, you being by yourself in your house and you can't leave kind of drives you crazy. Yeah, I see that. And he didn't have Stardew Valley.
He didn't have either Animal Crossing New Horizons or Doom Eternal that both released on March 20th, 2020. How?
If only he had Doom Eternal,
He would do you get to kill creatures of the night in that game? He would have loved that game. But yeah, I mean...
I do this for real.
It is... And also, like, the part... I don't know. It's very... He, like, starts to do his own research about vaccines. Like, it's... A lot of it, I was like, huh.
Yeah.
Nicely done, Rich. Not bad.
And I really liked I don't know if this is one of the first novels to do this, or like definitely I would venture to say one of the early ones that like provides a scientific explanation for like a legend and like a mythological thing, and that sort of feels like a theme, like with the end, like he becomes the legend and he's like trying to explain this mythology. Like I think that's really strong in this book. I could not get the thought out of my head that this whole time he's trying to create a hard magic system for vampires.
He is. He seriously is the whole time.
You could call it a hard vampire system.
Oh my god, Twilight is a hard vampire system. But that like works because that's what the whole book is like trying to figure out the vampire. But he's trying to solve the legend of the vampire. That is the whole novel. Yeah, so it works.
I don't know I think the parts that haven't aged well were the misogyny
and his one black coworker he refers to derogatorily.
right. They don't call. He doesn't say. What would a Muslim vampire think about the cross? He calls him a Mohammedan.
Yep, he does.
Very antiquated. It's very white man in the 1950s being like, I'm alone, bitch.
Yeah.
I'm killing and I'm horny.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about women and
it's
drinking
a man's
whiskey.
Novel. He drinks whiskey so much I'm convinced Richard Matheson never touched a drop of alcohol in his whole life. I don't know, man. He's like, he swallowed the tumbler and he didn't even grit his teeth and also his dick was big and he was so horny. I'm like, okay.
I think Matheson just wants that to be him. He's like, oh, the world end already. All I just want to be is a horny and drink whiskey.
You can do that right now, Rich. You don't have to. The world doesn't have to end to be horny.
I'm curious of this thought crossed my mind. The whole idea of there's this other, shall we say, race of beings trying to have a new world order in which now the white guy is excluded from and is the menace. Like, is there a little bit of that in there? Like, potentially some, like, xenophobia? I don't know if it's, like,
I think
explicit, or is that just, like, a tenor of, the horror novel expresses things that people are afraid of?
Even he, though, at the end of the book is like, oh, maybe it is for the best that I die. Like, that I don't belong here. Like, he does sort of
I'm
come
kind
to
of
terms
fucked
with
up.
it.
Yeah.
Which could be seen as like maybe a progressive, if you're approaching it from that sort of analytical lens, could be seen as like a progressive sort of thought of like the person at the top of the food chain, white man, now couldn't be further from the bottom of the actual food chain because they get eaten alive.
Yeah.
And being sort of fine with it and recognizing that the world has moved on. I found
something like the world has turned him into a monster. He's like, I'd kill me.
Exactly.
He
Yeah.
basically says that. He's like,
Yeah.
I kill me. I've killed a bunch of them. I guess this is fair.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that's...
Because he says to Ruth, he's like, hey, do me a favor. Don't let your society become too violent. Because at the end, he becomes really concerned about like the violence and like the police or the vampire secret police are so brutal that he's like, yikes, these guys are brutal. He's like,
because they love killing the vampires. Like they're like killing them, and he sees them like smiling. But that part of the book.
And then Ruth is like, did you see your face?
Yeah,
the vampires.
Yeah, it was so like I don't know. A lot of very heavy themes and moments come in like the last 10 pages that I found really like, oh man, I kind of wish the book was a little longer. Like,
me too. Like one of my big things with this was it felt too fast. Like I think thematically, like would have been great to like you have the exact same things happen and like maybe there's more philosophical meandering. Like it.
Yeah, I would have been okay with that.
Necessarily have to be as tight, just some more room to explore these interesting themes rather than just sort of mentioning them and then, it ending or moving on.
Yeah, like a lot of the stuff, like by the end of it, it doesn't, like all of the Virginia and Kathy stuff and all that definitely feels not really like what I'm here for. Like I don't really care about that. Like I feel bad for Robert, I guess, but I'm way more interested in like the philosophy of the new world. And I'm not saying I want the book to like Robert Neville dies and then there's like 15 chapters of Vampire Society. That is not what I'm saying.
Is that not what this book is?
But the like to have like in the middle, like I don't know, like maybe more time with him and Ruth or he like learns about this Vampire Society sooner, like because there is a 6-month time jump. I would have loved to explore that 6 months because I would have to imagine he found out where they are, maybe,
or he did something.
Yeah,
he sort of waited around for them to show up, and then when they show up, he's like, "Oh, I should have left."
Because it's scary. That's a very real moment. I do like that he thinks he's all tough, and then like the first time a human, I guess they're vampires, but the first time like a human being approaches him with a gun, he's like, oh, that's right, this is scary. Like, because it hasn't happened for like 5 years or whatever.
Yeah, I guess he's so used to just being like, he's like, I'm in charge, basically. Like, I'm the last one, but like, I sort of got a handle on things.
Yeah.
All right, Mac, before we read our 1-star Goodreads reviews, what would you rate I Am Legend?
On our totally specific, scientifically measured and accurate scale, I might give this a handful of Mistborns, and not for maybe I think there's just like if that is a signifier for just like things I thought were weird and didn't like, there were a handful of things, but for the most of it, I thought it was pretty good. It doesn't reach a full Mistborn, just like a sprinkling of.
I'd give it half to 0.33 Mistborns.
That feels about right.
A sprinkling.
Yeah.
All right, you want to get to these?
I would love to get to the 1-star review.
I love a great 1-star. Like, when someone took their time to write a great 1-star book review. And I'll say, a lot of these, similar to other books we've read, I don't disagree with.
Right, yeah.
Because a lot of them talk about, the misogyny. This one's favorite. So this is 1 star by a user called Akemi. Fuckboy Neville inadvertently becomes the last incel on Earth when his wife and all the other damn sexy whores, crossed out, women, die from a mysterious plague. Oh, how tragic it must have been for the virgin librarian of these hallowed halls to have never felt mine arduous touch.
He does say
Neville opines.
That is a direct quote.
As he researches cures to other people's deviancy for the greater good, for humanity. He sighs in his sleep, cigarette smoke entwining his virile, rigid manhood. Will Neville unravel his Madonna horror complex before he himself is force-femmed into an eternal undead seductress?
That is awesome! We gotta get Ackerby on the podcast. That is fucking perfect. I agree with all. Hey, what a perfect 1-star review.
Yeah, I actually found quite a few of these because they're pretty funny. 1 star by Hannah. Yeah, I have no trouble believing this was written by a white man in the 1950s for other white men in the 1950s. And while it might have been innovational 70 years ago, this exact story has been done, and done better, multiple times since then, so I have no trouble saying this can be left in the past.
I think I do agree. Oh yeah, that's sort of the point I was reaching. If you're like, I want to read a modern cool vampire novel, you should read Salem's Lot, not this. That is my...
Yeah.
I think that's...
Oh, I didn't bring this up when we were talking about it, but I thought this book was probably interesting only in the ways that it dealt with things that I didn't expect it to deal with, and that I haven't seen dealt with elsewhere in the sort of post-apocalyptic vampire setting. All like the standard stuff about like a guy trying to survive.
Yeah, I didn't care about that.
You know, we talk about like The Last of Us, you know, all that stuff.
The Road, for crying out loud. Like, there's way better
right?
post-apocalyptic stories out there than this.
Oh, I wish The Road had more about garlic.
That's the big thing. When they get hungry in the road, why don't they eat all that garlic?
1 star by Allopexin. Irma Gerd, a woman, why won't women love me? I'm so tragic. Die, germs. I'm sorry for making fun of this, but this aged very, very badly. As does any character named Neville.
That's true. That's true. Yo, shout out.
Here's this 1 star. This has to be like, I mean, this has to be a teenager. 1 star by Itakasan. These are bullet points. Read this for school. The last line, phew! TBH, I would have preferred this as a movie because I feel like the entire book was just describing his day-to-day life, which would have been better in movie format. Next bullet. The last chapter is so good, I love it. Next bullet. Everything coming for full circle. Next bullet. And once again, ... The last line, phew! I'm obsessed. Next bullet. Like the title doesn't make any sense until literally the last paragraph, and I love that. Next bullet. Wouldn't read again and wouldn't recommend, but I'm not too mad at the fact that I read it. It's a classic, so at least I can say I know about it.
Okay, so that person is stupid.
It must be like a 14-year-old. I can't imagine assigning this like in high school.
I would never.
Excuse. Why is he so horny? I'm not doing anything about it.
Well, and then the teacher's like, it's like you guys, your bodies are. They're exploding with hormones. Now imagine that's happening.
And then he's like, oh, no, we're all masturbating. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, right. Right. I also called a high school English teacher a professor. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah. Oh, here's the review by Maureen. I don't know if it's the version of the book I have or what, but following Robert Neville's decision to take the pills, there were like 100 more pages of quote-unquote chapters of the book that seemed to have nothing to do with the plot of I Am Legend. I tried to find some reference to these chapters in any review/write-up of the book, and could find nothing. They didn't seem to be post-log activities or anything, just random, annoying writings. They annoyed me so much that they put a bad taste in my mouth for the whole book.
I love that. Post-log activities as if he doesn't commit suicide at the end of the novel.
Yeah, every time I write a novel, I add, about 30 short stories after it and label them epilogues.
Epilogue 1, Epilogue 2.
And here we go.
It's not... Oh my god, that's great.
1 star by Mark. Read this when I was 15. I don't remember much about it, but I know I gave it a bad rating.
Hey, shout out Mark. Big ups to everybody who agreed with what we said. I would give it... I don't know. I was going to say 2 stars.
I give it 3.5.
Yeah, 3. 3, I think.
I think there's more redeeming and interesting qualities about it than there are, like, things... like drawbacks.
Yeah, I agree. And the whole like this has been done better since then that's nothing to me. Like okay, but this is still like a work on its own. So
there's still stuff in here that I haven't seen done. All right, well, that's all I have to say about I Am Legend. Mac, do you have any final thoughts?
No. Maybe. The movie. You know how the movie ends?
I actually don't, because I said I have not seen.
I was just curious if you knew. Did you know there are 2 different endings
of the movie?
Yeah.
Oh no, I did not know that.
Well, maybe I won't tell you. Maybe on some other episode we can add in a thing about this. But the original ending of the movie is nothing like the ending of the book, and the alternate ending is, and it's like the alternate ending did not test well with the audiences, like infamously poorly, like really bad. So they added a more like action movie sort of ending, and that's
what I feel I may have heard about this. I think I did get a spoiler because like We can just talk about it. Doesn't he sacrifice himself for like humanity or something?
In the
I don't really care, so we can talk about
in the original
Okay,
ending,
for anyone who doesn't want spoilers for a movie that's at this point, oh my god, 17 years old?
Yeah,
Jesus Christ.
in the original ending, like if you went to go see the theater or just like the one that's normally on the disc, because you have to watch the alternate ending on like a bonus feature, he just gets the cure, like he just discovers it. The dog dies. That's like the sad part. But he gets the cure, and he becomes the legend to like humans because there's the cure. Like he discovered the cure.
That's sort of what I figured the movie was always about. Like, oh, I'm legend because he's this badass who survived,
right?
And everything was fine.
In the alternate ending, like the original ending, like the creature he's been experimenting on the whole time has like a tattoo. And he realizes that, like, the head creature that's been hunting him has the same tattoo, and they haven't been hunting him. That creature's been trying to get, like, his zombie wife back or whatever. And so when he gives it back to them, they, like, all leave him alone, like, never ever touch him again. And and he's like and then it's like, oh, I am legend.
I'm the bad guy.
Yeah, I'm the bad guy. I don't remember if he, like, kills himself, but I know I've seen the two endings. I've never seen the movie. I just knew that there were two different endings, and I've seen both endings. But yeah, isn't that cool? I mean, that's an interesting.
It seems like if there's an idea that the general American public is allergic to, it is that, oh, the hero might be the bad guy.
Yeah.
And I think that tracks with a lot of things in American life,
especially in 2007. People are like, no. Like Bill, like big, like blockbuster marquee Will Smith movie. It's like ambiguous ending. No. I'm good, thank you.
The hero's the bad guy. Wait, but then why are we in Iraq? We can ask these questions.
Yeah. Audience tested well. Lockheed Martin said that we cannot have this ending of I Am Legend in theaters. Oh man, very good. Well, no, that's all I had to say. I just wanted to say that thing about the movie.
Well, we'll see you next time on Hardcover Hooligans. If you like the show, leave a review. Any comments about the show will only be read aloud on the show if they are left within a 5-star review on your podcast.
But you can say whatever you want. You can not
say
like
whatever you want.
But you have to leave it as a 5-star.
5 stars. And with that, I think, Mac, I'm going to go pour myself a tall glass of whiskey, put on a nice record of classical music, and jack off like there's no tomorrow.
That's good. Good for you. You're no Robert Neville. You're a man of the people.
No, I'm only having one glass of whiskey.
Well, yeah, you're not crazy, but you're going to jerk off a lot.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to have one glass of
vampire
jerk
porn.
Off.
To vampire.
Now, hey, they made a whole series of young adult novels about vampire porn, so I guess it's not really porn. But
romance.
They love each other, and they can only kiss when they get married. Similarly to...
That's why he couldn't kiss those vampires.
Because he's not married to them.
He wasn't married to them.
Because he never technically divorced his wife. And he would never do that.
All right.
Stay hard, everybody.
Stay hard.
Stay horny.
There we go.